Welcome to the TELUS Originals DocTalks, a series of talks dedicated to craft, themes, and ideas behind TELUS Originals documentaries with the people behind and in front of the camera. I'm your host, Sabrina Rani Furminger, and for this episode, we'll be talking with filmmaker Adrien Buitenhuis about Our Time to Be Kind, which had its highly anticipated premiere at the Victoria Film Festival in February 2024. Our Time to Be Kind draws its title from its inspiration and main subject, Dr. Bonnie Henry, the provincial health officer who rose to international fame when she became the face of British Columbia's response to the COVID-19 pandemic. The film opens with March 9th, 2020, and the famous press conference where Dr. Henry teared up while calling on British Columbians to keep our elders safe from the new deadly virus. Virtually overnight, many people in this province went from not even knowing the name of our provincial health officer to streaming her press conferences and doing their best to abide by the words she used to close each and every briefing. Be kind, be calm, and be safe. Our Time to Be Kind pulls back the curtain on Dr. Henry's response to the COVID-19 pandemic via footage that was shot during that time in Dr. Henry's office and behind the scenes at press conferences, as well as through interviews with Dr. Henry and key media and political figures filmed later. We see firsthand the thought and care that went into each and every word she uttered during those briefings, and the toll that the unceasing scrutiny and death threats had on her then and now. Our Time to Be Kind is the latest film from seasoned documentary filmmaker Adrien Buitenhuis. Known for recording a series of award-winning feature-length biography films on subjects Heath Ledger, Patrick Swayze, Paul Walker, and Burt Reynolds, Adrien's love for engaging with people and conveying their personal stories has created an intimate body of work. Today, we'll speak with Adrien about the joys and challenges of making Our Time to Be Kind, and what this film reveals about Dr. Henry, the provincial health officer, Dr. Henry, the human being, and effective and compassionate leadership under the fire of a pandemic. Adrien Buitenhuis, welcome to TELUS Originals DocTalks.
Thank you for having me. Thank you for the lovely introduction as well, Sabrina.
Very happy to have you here today, Adrien. Let's go back to even before the beginning of this film. What did you know about Dr. Bonnie Henry and the role of a provincial health officer before you began work on Our Time to Be Kind?
It's a really good question. I think not as much. I'll tell you that, I knew because of the work that was being done around the toxic drug crisis. So I knew her name and Dr. Perry Kendall's name prior. But to be honest, I watch the news, listen to the news and on the radio when I'm driving, but I would say that, I'm not plugged in to the provincial health system. And I think that, as you said in your introduction, a lot of people were like, what do you do? What is public health and what is the role and how does that affect our lives? And I think that it started affecting once the pandemic hit and they were given a lot more power and responsibility for decision making, their roles in society and our lives became much more apparent. So, I'd heard her name, but I think like the rest of us, public health isn't like the banner of like the news. Like we're caught up in celebrity culture and in, current events and war and all the things that are front page news that you hear about every day. And I hope, we can talk about this more later, but like one of the things that we talk about in the film a little bit is that the hope that because of the presence of Dr. Henry in our lives and the things that she was trying to do before in terms of the toxic drug crisis and safe supply in a political realm and things that she was trying to get attention towards from people in the government, they weren't being listened to. So the hope is now, at least because we all know, Dr. Henry is a household name in Canada, and potentially further than that, that some of the things that she's trying to get done now will actually happen because they're listening to her voice. So yeah, go back to your question. Yeah, I didn't know that much because we didn't have a pandemic. Like, I can remember when I can remember in January, February, that Christmas, and then when the pandemic broke out, and I can remember that time very well. And I remember her becoming more and more sort of prominent, but then it was really that March 9th, 2020 address where she got emotional. Because in the film, she says, I could see what the rest of the world couldn't see in terms of she's had such
staring into the abyss, I think were the words that she used, right? Staring into the abyss.
I think she said staring into this, or it might have been her sister that was in conversation with her, but her sister, Lynn. So, but that was the thing. And that's why she was so emotional, because, the first it had gotten into a long-term care home in North Vancouver, and the first person had passed away from COVID. And she knew in those settings that, we were in for what we ended up, that we're still in. So I think, that's the emotion. And also, I don't want to speak for Dr. Henry, but probably she was feeling a lot of the emotion of all the other stars and all the other things she'd gone through and all the experiences that she already had that were all built up in her from the past, but also knowing what was going to come for all of us that's the result of that moment of her tearing up, is that sort of genesis of knowing what's going to happen in the future without it happening, and also having the experience of the past. So
yeah. I found it really moving that your film actually began from that moment, because I remember watching that, and it had gone from, I remember that period of time, it had gone from thinking everything's ridiculous because, there's toilet paper, deficit at all these stores. And then, then our provincial health officer is standing there and getting emotional. And it's like, okay, this is getting real. Yeah. This is something we have to all be plugged into. So how did we get this film then? What was your original concept for the film? And, how did you convince Dr. Henry and her team to give you that kind of access?
It's a good question. It's kind of a multi-tiered answer. I think, well, like our industry, the film industry that I work in, we're a large part of the economy in British Columbia. And I do most of the work, most of the films I've done I shoot, they're not all filmed in Vancouver, but we were very, like a whole other job, COVID officer in the film industry. There's a whole new job that came up in the film industry, and a bunch of my friends that I know that were production managers pivoted into that role. So we were really aware of like, okay, we can't, like our jobs of making films is like, there's nothing, we're all close together. We can't work, like we're screwed. So like all of us were at home, not just people in the film industry, but yourself and everyone in 2020, like, especially through the summer, this is when the idea came up. After the New York Times article about Dr. Henry, that was like, wow, like, that was definitely a moment where it was like, okay, this is obviously not just for me, like that doesn't matter so much as the work matters, but the fact that it's in the New York Times doesn't matter, but it matters for like TELUS because it shows that films are made when, films are made in a collaboration. Films, they're not just one person, right? There are a lot of people that come involved that have the decisions to make it. The idea originally was like, I was at home and we were, my wife and I, and we were here, and it's like, we can't make films. I can't go anywhere to make the films that I normally make. Dr. Henry we're watching her every day. Like everyone's watching her to get the update. Like, what's the deal now? Because things were happening so fast, like things were really happening in real time, which we talked about in the movie. But So it was like one of those things where all of a sudden there was this person that had never had a profile really done about her. She'd had a CBC, there'd been some profiles, and of course global and the news people were starting to do. In Anna Mansing had done a piece on her, and like there was news around her, and there was obviously interest. But I looked kind of back into her history of what she'd done in her life. You know, Ebola, you know, being on the front lines of Ebola, Uganda, front lines of the SARS in Toronto, being like, you know, in the Navy with I think she said there's like 1,000 men and 2 women on a boat.
Yeah.
Doctor, her life prior to this moment and all the work that she'd done on an international stage and a national stage in terms of her knowledge of disease and like where her life in itself was like, oh, this is a great biography. This is something that warrants a film. So, how I was able to connect with her is that my literary agent, Michael Levine in Toronto, he has a Westwood Creative. He's been a sort of agent for a long time. He's connected to Lynn Henry, who is an editor for Not, I believe. She's edited some. You know, she edited the story that Sarah Polley did that won Oscar for best writer. I have to get the title of that, but anyway, she's a very established and accomplished editor. So there was a connection between Lynn Henry and Michael. But then it didn't happen right away. It took another 18 months. I believe. Now, let me see. We got in. I don't have the exact dates, but it would have been like midsummer 2020, and we didn't roll. And it's good to be clear about this. We didn't then roll cameras until just before Omicron, which was
mid-December 2021. Correct. Yeah,
correct. December 14th, 2021. So, you know, people wonder, oh my God, how could there be a film made about Bonnie Henry in the middle of the pandemic? Well, the truth of the matter is we didn't, when we were on lockdown and all through the production, weren't filming her. We weren't filming her because we couldn't. Like we were, you know, obviously a lot of the film was shot outdoors. And what I was saying before is that COVID protocol in film was so tight that like, you know, Tom Cruise had this whole explosion that's really well warranted or documented where he said, oh my God, like how could you do something so stupid? And we were like on high alert. So we were so careful we were very, just because of our job and our livelihood depended on us following the rules. So we were very much like plugged into like, okay, like what are the things that we need to do, masking and all that. And like, I went back through all the call sheets when we made this film and I was like looking at all the documentation about like all the things we had to do, and we were testing, and you know, before rapid tests were available, we were obviously going to labs and getting tested. Anyway, so I think it's important for people to know that too. So the film starts at that moment, and that's actually one or two of the only archival clips that we use in the film. The rest of it is shot verite, chronologically. So the whole film, the arc of the film, is shot in a way so that like I didn't edit the film to go back in time, and like all the interviews as well are quite chronological in terms of when I filmed them, in terms of what we're talking about, because the information was changing so much. So it was like I didn't want to like do the film and then go back like a year later and then get all these interviews to speak about the past, because then it was like we can rewrite history if we decide to, like in film, if you know. So it was pretty important for myself and the team making the film that we were conscious of that we were filming the moment. And that's what the film for me is about, because like, you know, I don't have a history of being like making health documentaries. So, you know, I'm conscious of that, of course, as well. So, yeah, I got a little bit off your question there.
That's okay. I find it interesting though. The very first day was what it was, which was, you know, mid-December 2021, because you basically were like jumping right into, you know, the middle of a whirlwind in a lot of ways. You know, that was when the Omicron variant, like I'll give you the, yeah, go ahead. But I'll give you the context. Yeah, well, I had a little bit of PTSD in some ways watching this film, because I remember we had to cancel a trip. We were going to go see, grandparents for the first time in England and met in years. And, and then Omicron went from, at the beginning of December, a few cases, and then mid-December, it was all over the world, so that particular moment that was, to see I remember that Dr. Bonnie briefing. And I know that a lot of people were watching, that day and wondering, are we ever going to be out of this? We're yet in another, crisis plateau, so yeah, tell me about, how you ended up jumping and how it felt like to kind of jump right into the whirlwind.
Well, it's funny. So December 14th. Okay. So what happened is, just to go back to your question again. So Dr. Henry said no for a long time. She was like, no, I don't want to do this. And one of the things as well is like, she didn't want to make a film about her. She's like, I don't want a film about me. Like, obviously we talk about it in this film. It's like, she's like, I don't want a film made about me. Like, I want to. And so the first time that I met Dr. Henry finally, which wasn't until like early December 2021. So like, yeah, quite a bit later from when we proposed the film, which was a profile piece, really. Like, it was a profile documentary, more similar to like the films I'd already made, which I've been doing for a long time. But she like rejected it and was like, so the first time I went to meet her in Victoria, at the office, she greeted me with Dr. Danielle Ben Smith standing beside her, and she was like, you should be making a film about Danielle. She's like, I'm going to leave now. I'm like, no, you can't leave. But what was important for Dr. Henry was that the film wasn't just about her. But obviously the issue around that is that, like TELUS and, we want to see a film about Dr. Henry, but I believe, I think, in the way that the film structure, I think it's basically mid-second act, like around 40 minutes, that Dr. Danielle Ben Smith is introduced, and then we have quite a bit about her, and then that's kind of, for me, was really important. There's a whole other film. There's so much going on with that she's been able to do as well. So anyway, that happened. Like, I think it was December 7th, 2021. We met, and then, within a week or so, we agreed to make the film. But we capture, and you could see it in the film, Dr. Henry getting a phone call from the East Coast about the rugby players that had come back with Omicron. Where they were UVic players in Ontario for a rugby tournament, and they had come back, and those were the first cases of Omicron. And you can literally see her before the December 4th. I think it was before. I don't quote me on it, but and then 3 days later, we had scheduled to film December 17th, and that's when they announced Omicron. So it was like it just kind of happened. And so the thing also is, like, we were able to start filming that moment because everything, as you can remember, before Omicron, things had kind of gotten to a place where we're going into Christmas, and it's like, okay, we're going to have family together, and we're going to actually have a Christmas this year. This is going to be great. And then Dr. Henry and Minister Dix had to stand at like December 17th and be like, oh, by the way, you're not allowed to, you have to have like small gatherings, and, you have to totally and all the rest. It was nuts. It was like the last thing that anyone wanted to do was to tell people like yourself that they couldn't go and be with family after, almost 2 years. So, it's funny how, documentaries work. It's quite different than narrative filmmaking because you follow the path that presents itself, and it just turned out that we were there for that. But and then everyone got COVID.
Wait, you mean your team got COVID?
No, I did. No. I'm just saying generally. We didn't.
Oh yeah, generally.
I had not had COVID. I had not had COVID, but I did get it in March, early March, and I missed a bunch of filming. I was like, I can't. I got it, and I think I've had it once since then, more recently, as many people have. But So it was very real, and it was I would have been happy if nothing had happened, but it just turned out that we ended up. I mean, who wants to wish anything, a wave of COVID? It just turned out that, and I think it was an interesting moment too, because I think it was finally at a moment if we can remember how it was in 2021 before Christmas. It was like, okay, I think we're out of this. Like the wave, it's all about these waves, right? And like we're at a place where like, oh, we're finally getting back to almost normal, and then boom.
Right. And that was before the availability of the rapid tests. That was before there were the kids had access to. It's interesting how, like, watching your film, how much and even somebody like, I'm a student of history. I'm very, I've existed during the last 5 years. I kind of forgot a lot of those feelings. This film really brought me back to it, and I appreciated having the distance, and, the new perspective, that was brought from the distance. I'm curious though about, Dr. Henry as an interview subject. How would you describe her, as a documentary subject? Was she, did you find she was aware, of you guys all the time? Did you have a lot of conversations, with her? Like, bring us behind the scenes a little bit.
So I think Dr. Henry never expected in her life that she would be giving daily updates. I think the idea of being on camera and being in front of the camera and having to do that job day in, day out was for her, like for anyone, extremely stressful. Hence it taking a really long time for her to agree to make this film. And I think just going back to the point what you made, where I think one of the main reasons that she decided to make the film is that it's really easy to forget history. I think especially in the way that we live, the amount of information that's brought in front of us through our phones and through the world we live in is so vast and intense. Like all the time, there's new stuff in front of you that to actually think about what actually happened historically within the last 2 years is really challenging. And I think that was probably the main reason that Dr. Henry wanted to make this film, was like, we forget. And she's witnessed this many times. Like what happened with SARS was like, okay, let's get all these things in place so that this doesn't happen again. And then it's like, well, that actually is going to cost a bunch of money. The government's like, well, we don't really want to do that because we need to spend money on something else. And then this happens. So I think the idea of making this film was really based on the fact that it's really, she and her team were so in the moment of like trying to do the best their job, that for her, the idea of like, oh, and now a film crew has to capture this, like this is insane. But I think the main reason, and she wrote a book as well with her sister about the first, which is really interesting as well. The reason that she wrote that book with Lynn is that she wanted to remember for herself too. It's like, obviously she wants to publish a book with her sister, and there was an opportunity to do that, which is good. But it's also like she wanted to journal the experience for herself, to remember it and to put it in writing in the moment, even though like the idea of tacking on a book, obviously Lynn was very helpful and is a writer and did a lot of the writing. But for her to record what she was feeling in the moment while it was still happening was important. So the idea of making a film about it in the moment. Now, to answer the next question about Dr. Henry and how she was behind the scenes. I mean, she, what we did with the film, as if you see the film, which you have, is a lot of it is verite in the sense that she's working. Like we sometimes will ask her little questions about, we'll interview her while she's working, but we really didn't want to get in the way of what she was doing because it was so important. Like not poor Dr. Henry, but Dr. Henry was working very hard. Like she was pulling crazy long days. Like I would say, she was running at 5 a.m. Wow. Every day. She'd run because she needed to do that for her sanity. And then she would be like straight into meetings. she'd have to be preparing for these things at like 11 or 10 in the morning with all the briefings, all the information in the morning, figure out how to distill it, write it with her team so that it makes sense and that she's careful with her words. The message between Minister Dix and herself is clear, and they're deciding on the message and what's happening and what they're going to do. And then she's got to do her whole other day of meetings all the way through until, I don't know, 8 or 9, 10, 11 at night, and then wake up and do it again the next day for a marathon. So what she likes. I sat down and interviewed her twice the whole time, where we actually sat in a chair, and in the film we use one clip from the interview, I believe, at the very end. So I did interview her twice for about an hour and a half or an hour each time, but like just the idea of like me taking her aside and sitting in her chair, like it's obviously really important for her to talk, but her time was so precious. Her like, so we were conscious of that. But to be around her and to be around her team was much more interesting than most of the films that I do. Like by far. Like they're doing real work that's like obviously people that are celebrities, that are actors, and you know, they have their stories and we recognize them because they're in these big films, and we can connect with them and empathize with them because we see them in these like moments of cinema. And I interview these people and I interview the people around them to make a film, but to actually witness how like the work that they were doing and like the decisions and the challenges of what they were trying to do I felt privileged, and the fact that there was a lot of women in these positions, that's part of the film as well. It's like, you know, Dr. Danielle Ben Smith, Shannon Waters, Laurel Thompson, who works really closely with Bonnie, Ashley Halicki. There's like all these women that are incredible, and they're smart and powerful and coming from a really educated place and making really measured decisions. Like it was very interesting as a filmmaker to be able to just we really tried. As you can see, the film is shot. Our crew is like 2 people. Like I'm shooting, or Simon Schneider shooting, and that's it. We do our own audio. There's Taylor Hanley. There's basically 2 of us shooting. So we have a easy rig sort of steady cam, and we're filming. We're back a bit, obviously, and we're just capturing the moment. So single camera. So the other thing is we're not like doing a ton of editing reality style to be like, okay, this is what we're just trying to be there and get out of the way and capture. And like, that's the type of filmmaking that I like. The Basil style, like the documentary tradition as a whole, is way more interesting to me. I love interviewing people. I think that's important, but that's way more interesting than a bunch of people sitting in chairs. Like, I wanted to do this, and like, you'll see Simon Schneider, who's an amazing filmmaker, who has a new project, Orca. I think I have to get the name right, but he's got a film premiering about this orca whale that was repatriated by the Lummi people, and but actually passed on the way, but was stuck in Miami at an aquarium for years. And it's this really fascinating documentary. And Simon, who is a collaborator of mine, I learned a lot from him in the process of how to make verite films, and I shoot a lot of the films that I make, but like just to be the smallest possible footprint, so that the filmmaking and the sort of thing that we are, this beast of like production, we're trying not to impose,
right?
We're not trying to steal from the scene. And I think for Dr. Henry, for Bonnie and Danielle and everyone involved, it was super important that our team was small and our footprint was small, because we just didn't want to get in the way. Like what they were doing was like, it seems so much in the moment with Adrien Dix as well, and everything that was happening. It was like a lot. It was important. Like it was affecting all of our lives. And so we were super conscious not to get in the way of their work. But Dr. Henry, it was fascinating as a filmmaker to be able to be given the opportunity to witness that. And also, you know, I filmed with the Overdose Prevention Society as well, Sarah Blythe. You know, I spent some time with her, not filming obviously, and then we filmed some stuff there, and we filmed some stuff during some of the protests as well, and talked to a bunch of people that were opposed to what Dr. Henry and the provincial government was doing. You know, you can be critical of the film. I could have added more of that stuff for sure, or you know, that was. But what is the film? What is this film about? Like, is this film? Am I trying to make this like overarching statement about both sides and really? I don't think I have the. I don't know. That's not my. Yeah, I don't want to say that's not my skill, but like I don't feel like that was the motive or the job of making the film was to do that. And it's also so hard to like we're still in it, right? We're still in it. So how do I imagine that in the moment that we're making this film, think that I can make a definitive answer about history and how it happens? All I could do in the moment is try and not get in the way and just capture what was happening and try and then give that to the audience in a way that is unfiltered as possible. Is to just be like, this is what we were thinking about in the moment. This is what was happening. And what's going to happen next? Like, we all don't know, including Dr. Henry. I mean, she could see because she had the history of kindness, but like, what do we like? And so the story is about like understanding, trying to do the best of the way you know, and when you know better, do better, which is a Maya Angelou quote.
It's interesting to hear you speak about, the question of the documentarian perspective and, you know, interacting with the subject in this way. Well, so and also it seems, and correct me if I'm wrong, that you felt as much a responsibility towards capturing that moment in time, you know, as you did to, you know, accurately portraying Dr. Henry in that moment in time. I guess the two are not mutually exclusive. With regards to, there's so much about this film that I'm going to carry with me. And there's a lot that I also learned. It challenged a lot of my own ideas about Dr. Henry. I was really moved to see her interactions with the public, you know, be it in the pharmacy or on the street, and also kind of horrified, you know, to see her reading, you know, the violent, threatening emails, you know, that she received. Well, what impact do you think her interactions with the public had on her during this time?
Wow, that's a really big question. I think the hardest thing for Dr. Henry is the fact that she can't live a normal life anymore. She never wanted to be famous or known. She can't go out without either someone being, for the most part, very like appreciative, but she also, you know, since I've interacted with her, has had to have you know, police escort or private security, or so not to. I think the real challenge for her, for someone who, you know, lives in British Columbia, and I don't think people like we talked about it in the film. You know, there's people. She did. We filmed. I think it was the December 17th press conference after the Omicron release, and she had hundreds of emails. And a lot of them were very negative right after that, where they were going directly, like they were going to Bonnie. And she was reading them, and I don't think the people sending them really understand how when you say words to someone, it's that they're real. So I think it's like, it's really, really hard. This whole period, I think, for her has been extremely hard, because she can't just live her life. Like she can't just be like, I think that celebrities or people that are known, like for instance, this has been obviously a topic of a lot of the films that I've made. They are very, very lucky. They're like a chosen few that get to act in movies and make money. But then there's a flip side to that. Like they can't go out in public and not have someone come up to them and be like, oh, can we have a picture together? And think that they know them, right? Think that they know them. And I think Bonnie says in the film, she's like, Simon's filming her and he asks about it. He's like, what is it like to be known? And she's like, well, it's interesting because people will come up to me and they think they know me, but they don't know me, but they kind of know me because I'm myself. When I try to be very, like, I don't put on a political, like, I don't go into this different person or persona when I'm in front of you. I'm myself. And that's why she's been, her vulnerability and her presentness and her ability to not be a politician is what's made her so effective. But I think the hardest thing is that she lives with this fact that she has to be extremely careful all the time. And I think it's really, you're really, really, like, for you to wake up in the morning, for myself to wake up in the morning and to go outside and not know if you're safe.
Yeah. When you look back and you ponder the making, the entire process of pitching and filming and all the post, what are some of the the memorable moments that come to you, that you have a lot of emotions and memories attached to?
I mean, look at me, I'm almost crying. Like, I'm a too emotional person and I'm tired to make a picture like in a film, but I think I feel emotional because that's how I work with people, is I like empathetic, and it's like, it's hard. It's like, I have a lot of memories. I mean, honestly, I can remember making the film, like every moment of making it. I just remember feeling like that it was important to capture this. And I think this, I don't know. I don't know. It's hard. Like, filmmaking is so technical. Like, so like a lot of it is when you're capturing stuff, especially when you're like, if I'm doing other films where I'm just directing and I'm not holding a camera and recording my own sound and thinking about direction and how this is going to cut into the movie and how am I going to get from this shot to the next, and we're only using one camera, so I don't have a cut point while I'm all doing this and technically shooting it and making it look good and in focus, and I'm pulling my own focus and I have someone else making sure it's in focus. There's so much going on, and I feel very comfortable in that. Like, I feel like I've done this enough to be able to be listening, which is the most important thing about documentary filmmaking, is sound, like audio. What are we hearing? Like, the image is super important, but like, if you're not listening, if you're not doing all this stuff and you're not actually present, then you could miss something that could change the story completely. Because, I think this goes back to not this film, but when I'm interviewing people, for instance, about making a film about Patrick Swayze or Heath Ledger, and I'm interviewing these people that are talking about people, often they're deceased, they'll often say things while they're talking about them that are like, not, I wouldn't say an Easter egg, but they're kind of like an Easter egg moment where they say something, and the way that they answer the question, it's not just about what they said, but it's how they answered it. And it can open up a whole other world where the whole film will pivot just because of the way that they answer the question, because you learn something about how that person was. You're like, wow, okay. So I think, if anything, it's hard to talk about memories. I think that, like, my job is to make films and to be as present as possible so that I don't miss something. But I don't know. It's like, making verite films is part of my human nature. Like, that's just how I feel like, and people can criticize the work or whatever, but I feel like I found something that I'm capable of. do I want to be a filmmaker every day I wake up? No, I don't. I sometimes don't want to make films anymore because it's hard, and it's like, the other thing too about filmmaking, especially when I'm doing like entertainment films, is like, I'm dealing with this right now on another project. It's like, there's so much stress around something. It's like, we're not curing cancer. It's like, we're making it. It's like, let's just chill out. And it's like, I don't know. It's a lot of, making films is super stressful, but it's like, and I think one of the things, like, looking back about this film is like, there's a real weight of responsibility about this project versus other ones that I've made, because I want to get it right. And I want it to be truthful, because it's like, this is something that it's not just like an actor's life. It's like, this is a subject that affected all of us so deeply, like, and it still does. And the experiences of people that are upset and have lost, like, their family, like, people their family have died, or they know someone who's died, or they got sick, or someone who had an adverse reaction to a vaccine. There's a lot of people that have experienced the pandemic in ways that I could never understand. So when they watch this film, Our Time to Be Kind, and they look at Bonnie Henry, their relationship with her and this subject could be so different than my personal experience. So I don't think I would ever set out to make a film that was like, I mean, we can talk about this when it comes to people protesting the film at the premiere. It's like, I feel for those people too, because some of the things that they're saying, I don't believe in. And I think that their information is totally not credible and like, part of it. But I also feel for them, because I realize that my experience and the experience of people that are, not working in a factory, that like, where they had no choice to go to work, and they have to work to feed their family, and to tell them they're not allowed to do certain things. And like, I can't understand the whole picture. And so, I do feel the weight of responsibility of making a film about the subject, because it touches on a lot of things and people's own personal experiences that I just can't understand. You know what I mean?
Absolutely. Thank you for that answer. You really brought me into some of the thought process and emotions that you were feeling as you were making the film. We will talk about the premiere in a moment, but before we do, I'd love to hear your thoughts about the lessons contained in the film, specifically about the role, Dr. Henry's role during that time. What lessons in leadership, and specifically how to lead during a society-wide emergency, do you think can be found in Our Time to Be Kind?
Sorry, I got distracted. Ask me that question again. That's a big question.
Yeah, it is a big one. It's about lessons in leadership. What lessons in leadership, specifically how to lead during a society-wide emergency, which is what we continue to face during the pandemic, and with the toxic drug crisis, and all the different weather events. There's a lot of these big issues that we are dealing with. What kind of lessons do you think can be found in the film around how to lead during that kind of crisis?
Well, it goes back to what I said, the Maya Angelou quote is like, do the best with what you know. And what you know is, that's a gray area too. It's like, well, where are you getting your knowledge from? But if you're a scientist, or if you're a doctor, and your life work is dedicated to understanding like population health and public health, you're taking all that information and you're doing the best, trying to make the best possible decision for the greatest amount of people, right? Which is an important thing to say too. Dr. Henry and Adrien Dix are trying to make a decision for the greatest amount of people, not just you, but like in that moment, and when they have new information that supersedes what they know, they're gonna change it. So when you know better, do better. So I think that's the key theme. The other thing is that I think Dr. Henry became well known and was looked at by the New York Times and other people as leading well, because she was, she didn't put on this air where everything was going to be okay. This is what we're doing. Like, I know exactly what's happening. And because we didn't know, like, things were changing. So I think the fact that she was vulnerable, and that she showed emotion, is powerful. And I think, in New Zealand, that happened as well with the Prime Minister.
Was there anything in the reaction to the film that night that surprised you?
Well, that's a kind of multi-tiered question. I think
I do. That's like my thing.
No, it's good. That's good. That's a good question. It's funny because most of the time I'm doing your job, so it's like I think I've only done this long form stuff 3 times.
Doing right,
maybe even twice. So I'm not used to being on this side of it, which is terrible. I don't know. Whenever I have to do this, I think of all the other people I've interviewed, and I'm like, oh man, I'm asking a lot of these people, like, the in front of the camera. It's like, there's a reason why I'm not in front of the camera. It's like,
well, it's important. You're one of the best ambassadors that you have for your film. So bring it back.
So. Okay, so yeah,
February 2024, and that premiere. Like, what was your film? You're hearing people talk. What did they want to talk about? What were they feeling? Like, what did you hear that night that might have surprised you?
To be honest, that night was really intense. And I don't even really remember the Q&A because it was so, there was just so much going on. I think I talked a little bit, but Dr. Danielle Van-Smith and Dr. Henry were part of the Q&A as well. So a lot of people were interested in asking them questions. I just remember the fact that, a lot of people came to see the film, which was great. Like, it was a sold out premiere, which was always nice. Oversold. But yeah, I think it was the thing about seeing films, like the thing about actually doing and making movies and seeing them in a film. There's a reason why a theater and a movie, the way that like movies are made, or like the way that filmmakers think about making films, is that they're in theaters, because it's a collective experience where 300 plus people get in a room and they all experience something together, right? And like, so I think I was sitting in the back. I always like to sit in the back because I just like to watch how people react to films. And like, the thing when you screen your films with other people, it's a totally different experience, right? Like, I've watched this film, I don't know how many times, and I've been working on it for how many years, and it's the same with every film. It's like, you're in the bubble of like this, and then you get to actually feel what it's like to actually, for other people. And it's like really intense. Like, it's an incredible experience. It's like really special. But I think I know that I was sitting in the back, and I was sitting close to Dr. Danielle Van-Smith and to Shannon Waters. And for me, it was more like a good portion of the theater were people that were involved in making the film, or people that I knew. So my experience was like, oh, this is a nice moment because we're all taking this in. But I think it's hard for me to get into like the minds of all the people that watched it and what their experience was. But and Victoria is like an older crowd. Like, there's definitely was a lot of people that were there because they wanted that. I would say that a lot of people in the audience there were some that were like not into the message that Dr. Henry and the BC government, or like how they handled it. There were people that were very against it, that were watching the film, but there were a lot of people that were there because I think they'd appreciated what she'd done. So, yeah, I don't know. It's so hard. That's like, I know that you've asked me a question and I should give you an answer, but it's really hard to give you an answer about it, because there was also, and you could ask me about this, but like, there was also what was happening outside the theater. And
right. Let's talk about that then.
Yeah, I had no, so rewind to, what was it, like February 8th, 2024. We were premiering this film. we knew going into it that there was obviously, we'd done some press for the film, and we knew that there were some people that had spoken negatively about it, and how could there be a film about Dr. Henry? Like, she's the one telling us to be on lockdown, and how are they making a film? And all of these questions that are valid questions, like that, or with us, if someone's telling us not to be with people and they're making a film, but which we weren't, we were never filming a film when it was safe. And we'd started making the film, just for our own con. So it wasn't like lockdown or anything. We shot a lot of the film outside, and obviously we followed the strict COVID protocol for me, and we were good. But there was a community of people that resented the film, which I was aware of because I've been making a film about it. But what surprised me was that the sort of the passion and the continued feeling that existed around it. And of course, the film where we premiered is very close to the legislature building. So there's already people had come over as well from Vancouver, but there's already a community of people that are protesting Dr. Henry, what she's doing. So that was very, there's a proximity to that. But basically there had been, and I was also staying close by. So even from where I was staying, I could see the protests out of my window. So I was like, oh my God. And it was scary. It was scary for me.
There were what? Like I read some of the news articles. So there's like a crowd of protesters outside of the theater, that like maybe 40 or 50 protesters is the number that I heard. Police were there, and then anybody who came to see the film had to like walk through the crowd, correct?
Yeah. So and look, this is just my perspective of it in the moment. There was people, and they were like a group of people, and I went through there as well, obviously, to go to the theater, but like who were there was definitely a community of people that knew each other, and they were protesting, and it was for the most part pretty like they were saying their message, and they had their signs, but it wasn't angry or anything. But at the moment when people had to actually go through the film, the entry to the theater is like this tunnel. So all the protesters were right there, and they basically formed this gauntlet that people had to walk through to get into the theater, and they were shouting things at them and being very mean, like just really, it's really intense. So that anyone who went into the theater had to experience this. So it was like, yeah.
Do you think?
Yeah.
Sorry. Do you think it impacted though people's experience of the film and how the film was received that night, to have had to walk through that, to still see this, very visible, that there's still a very vocal group of people who are, deeply upset about, Dr. Henry and, her policies and the policies of the government.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
I think that if they wanted to make a statement to those people that were going into the theater about their feelings, they were definitely heard, because it was unavoidable. It was like, and I like, know what else to say about that other than, I don't agree with a lot of the things that they were protesting, but I also don't have their experience, and I don't know what each person has gone through and what they know, or what they think. So yeah, I can't be upset with them, and I don't like. I can't be upset with them protesting. Like, people have the right to protest, but it was intense. Like, and it was a wake up call for me too, to be like, wow, this is still really. And since then I was driving in Vancouver, and I saw other people protesting, and it's still a thing. It's still, we're still in this, and they have the right to protest. But it was intense. Like, and there was police, like after the film ended, there was police that were like, okay, there's still protesters outside, giving direction. And I was like, I've never in my life made a film where there was. But so it was a lot. So it's hard for me I had to be in the moment. I was trying to And when you have, I think it's also just because I think there was definitely some awareness that Dr. Henry was going to be there. So that, of course, is a driving factor behind why people wanted to be there and protest.
Yeah. What I'm hearing from you is empathy. And I think that is really clear in all of your filmmaking, as well, that even if you don't necessarily agree, you have that empathy, you have that, understanding about everybody's different POV. And I feel that's very important, I would think, for a documentary filmmaker. We are coming to the end of our time together today. Before I get to the final question, I would love, you have referenced several times that you're tired, that you're working on getting your film blocked, and I would love to hear a little bit of what can you tell us about what you're working on right now?
I'm working on a film with a director, Andrew McCarthy, who is a member of the Brat Pack, which is a group of actors from the 1980s that weren't called the Brat Pack until mid-80s, 1985, June 6, 1985. There's an article in New York Magazine by David Blum that basically put all these people in a group together and called them the Brat Pack, which was a reference to the Rat Pack. But the fact that they were called the Brats, it changed all of their lives.
I was born in the 70s. This is absolutely my wheelhouse. Yes, the Brat Pack.
The Brat Pack, yeah. So it's a film, and it's been released, and we're going to screen the film at Tribeca. I believe either June 7th or 8th, which is coming up. It's mid-March. So, it's a film called Brats, and it's going to be on Hulu. It's a Disney ABC project in partnership with Neon. And I wasn't the director. I was the cinematographer, co-cinematographer, and producer of the film. So it's very much shot in the same style as Our Time to Be Kind, where Andrew basically, he's the director of the film, and he wrote a book. He wrote a book about his experience that this was based off. But the film starts by him cold calling all these brats who he hadn't talked to in 30 years, who, from our perspective, they're all buddies and they had this pact, but that was all kind of created by an article. So the story is really verite style, like him be on the phone and be like, "Hey, Emilio, can I come visit you and talk about this stuff?" So the film is really about Andrew coming to terms with his past, but it's also he's also dealing with heavy nostalgia, because we're talking about the most important teen movies ever made, and a real shift in Hollywood from, like, you think about teen movies in the early 80s. All of a sudden, since then, like, a lot of our films, like if you think of the CW, or you think of, I guess you could say Friends, but if you think Saved by the Bell, you think of all these shows, they're based on the fact that the lens went from people that are older to looking at people in their teens and looking at their stories as important.
Yeah.
And like, you look at the Breakfast Club, Criterion Collection. So it's all about it's about the actors. So we went and visited, and we shot, it was cool. you shoot with the lighting. There's like, we're shooting verite. So we're just filming him and interacting with these people for the first time in 25, 30 years. And
wow.
It's a really cool film. There's a lot of great music, obviously, with a great soundtrack. And so I'm tired because we're supposed to picture lock the movie today, meaning after today, we're not allowed to make any changes to the picture, and we have to license all those films. And I'm getting hammered with questions and things that are, as I said earlier, like, none of this really matters. We're just making an entertainment movie. Like, I shouldn't be stressed out about it, but I guess I bring that on myself because I feel the responsibility of finishing this film. And it's my job, so I have to do it.
Well, I would argue that it does matter, because, people, they want to learn. People spend time with these films. You're holding up a mirror to a certain period of time, and people love sitting there in nostalgia. So, no, I have a lot of respect for what you do.
So the film is called Brats, and it's a lot of my films. I work with a company called Network Entertainment, and they're a Vancouver-based company. Andrew McCarthy is calling me. There's a Brat Pack. This is getting on set. I'll just have to wait. So Network Entertainment is a company I've done all the IM projects with. So I've been working with them for 7 years, and I think we're like 40 plus staff, like a lot of people working for a doc company. I think in Canada, there's no other company this big in terms of the doc space. And yeah, it's a great company, and they gave me the opportunity. They optioned the book, and that's how we came to make Brats. But the whole I Am series of films, which there are many, I didn't direct all of them. There's lots of them. They're available on Crave in Canada. You can see them on Crave. I believe you can get them on Amazon Prime. The reason I'm able to make films and live in Canada is because of that company. And it was nice to work with TELUS on this project, because this is something that I produced, and I worked with a small team and was able to do this as a sort of smaller budget project, which I really care about. And it was a great opportunity. But for the most part, I've been making films in the more like sort of pop culture space with network entertainment, which has been a great, the Derek Murray and Oliver Ritz and the company I work with. It's really cool to be able to live in Canada and make this sort of material, because it's rare. Like we don't support, Canada. We're known, Vancouver is a big movie town, but it's a service town as well. So it's nice to actually be here making original content out of Canada.
Fantastic. I mean, it's what you're describing is this incredible ecosystem of documentary companies, but also, as somebody who is a consumer of documentary, what a wonderful time it is to be a documentary lover. So Adrien, for my final question then, let's return to our time to be kind. If there is one thought or one emotion that you'd like people to think or feel as the end credits roll on our time to be kind, what would that be?
Ooh. Well, that's up to them. I think that's up for them. I don't think so I mean, I can know what I feel by watching it, but I think I don't think I can put that on someone else. I think that I think as filmmakers, we're just appreciative when anyone actually watches the work. Like we're often surprised, like someone says they've seen a film that I've made. I'm always like, oh, really? That's surprising. Like, I don't know why. That's stupid to say, but like, I don't think, I don't know. I think that's why films are relevant, is that we all experience them differently.
Yeah. Yeah. What a fantastic conversation that we have had today, Adrien. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much.
And thank you, viewers and listeners, for listening to the TELUS Originals Doc Talks, and to our guest, Adrien Buitenhuis. Watch TELUS Originals documentaries on TELUS Optik TV Channel 8 and at watch.telusoriginals.com, and follow us at TELUS Originals on Instagram. Doc Talks are a production of TELUS Originals. This episode was produced by Sharon Bradley with technical support by Matt Waterworth. Ken Soy is the production executive for TELUS Originals Doc Talks. Doc Talks are produced on the traditional and unceded territory of the Musqueam, Squamish, and Tsleil-Waututh nations.